Hello and welcome to today's webinar, and thank you for joining, everyone. We're just waiting for a couple of more people to join, and we will start in the next few seconds. Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you again for joining today's webinar about content management and finding the path to successful content management. My name is Kristen. I am director at h2c, and I will be guiding you through the presentation today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the chat functionality, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen, and post your questions in the chat functionality, and I will be making sure that at the end of the webinar I will get back to you with regards to those questions. The webinar should be about 20 minutes long, and that leaves us enough time to cover those questions at the end. Okay, so let's have a look at the topics that we will be covering in today's webinar. First of all, we'll have a look at why content management matters. What are the content management challenges that we are facing today? And then have a look at how static content can be managed. And last but not least, we'll have a wrap-up as well. So why did we choose to talk about content management today? Well, content management is a major industry challenge, and that is unfortunately not always on the forefront of a hotelier's mind. So as content management with all the AI and machine learning technology coming up is becoming more and more important, we wanted to create this webinar about content management for you today. So content management is currently very time consuming, facing ever increasing complexities. Keeping content fresh requires immediate action, and it requires a lot of information that needs to be updated constantly. And although content drives conversion, it remains wildly underestimated. So why does content management matter? And before we dive into that, I wanted to briefly provide you with an overview of the different content types that are out there. And then we'll dive into the topic of why content management is so important. First of all, we have the dynamic content, which is all about rates and availability. And for dynamic content, if you have an integrated solution with interfaces between all your various systems, that means you can actually manage your dynamic content from one system. So you don't need to log into PMS, Channel Manager, IBE, and OTAs all the time in order to make updates. You can do that from one system. The same is mostly the case for visual content, even though we're getting a bit fragmented here. So visual content is everything about images and videos. And there are tools out there like Leonardo or iCE that offer you the possibility to have a central visual content management tool. However, there are some areas, for example, the website, or sometimes also the IDE, where Leonardo or iCE cannot push images to. So there's some additional databases that sometimes need to be used in order to really manage your visual content. The very fragmented content type static content is all about descriptions and amenities. So here we're talking about facilities, any policies that you have at your hotel, and any outlets, for example, restaurants, spa, meeting rooms, and so on. And here, the content really needs to be managed through various systems. For example, for the GDS, we need different content, as well as for the website, IBE. And then for the OTAs, we need to log into all the various OTA extranets and Metasearch extranets in order to keep the static content up to date. So as you heard from what I was just talking about, we wanted to focus this webinar here on static content, as the dynamic and visual content, the importance of those areas are already widely established, whereas static content is often overlooked. So how does content impact revenue? Well, first of all, it plays a major role in attracting customers to your website, for example, or to any other websites where you are listed, just based on the informational content. So, for example, if I were to look for a vacation to the beach, I would first of all type in maybe searching for a hotel with a prime beach location. So based on the content, you are attracting customers to your property, and that shows you just how important that is. Also, if your content is optimally displayed for each target group, it heavily supports your personalization strategies and can help to convert these targets group even better. Content also allows for consistent and professional brand appearance across all the different channels that you employ. Therefore, the acquisition of new website visitors, for example, or social media followers can be achieved through content. If a strong content management strategy is implemented, that also helps your content scores and ultimately your OTA rankings positively. And I'll talk about that on the next slide as well. Content also achieves, or if content is managed correctly, then content parity across all the channels can be achieved, and that should be the ultimate goal, because then you're setting the right expectations for every traveler, and no matter on which website or site they are, they always will receive the same information. And of course, we shouldn't forget about the GDSs and the travel agents. They also need to receive sufficient and valuable content in order to make their bookings. And again, here the content parity plays a very important role as well. So, as I just mentioned the OTA rankings before, due to good content management, you can actually achieve better ranking on the OTAs. So here we've just listed a couple of the key factors that influence a page rank algorithm, for example, for Booking.com or Expedia. And as you can see, content is just one of those factors in a number of factors that have more to do with dynamic content. However, content can really factor or support your page rank algorithm, especially in competitive markets where everyone is already optimizing their dynamic content, and here you can really stand out with your content. And let me just show you how OTA content scores are displayed on the OTAs. So here's an example from Booking.com, and you can see that you not only can see your own property page score, but also you can see the ranking of your competitors and how maybe you need to make some changes in order to achieve a better content score. Then the next one is Expedia, that you can see here, where they dive into a lot more detail on which areas you need to improve. So how can you make sure that your OTA content scores is as high as it can be? Well, unfortunately, the OTAs don't really offer an alert system, so you really need to review this manually every month. And really, unfortunately, it is every month, because OTAs, they really like to make a lot of changes to their page ranks and to their content scores. So they not only make changes how they calculate it, but also they add new criteria. And therefore, it should be reviewed regularly. And furthermore, don't forget about the meta searchers. The meta searchers also have content scores that are often overlooked, and sometimes some of these meta searchers, they pull the content from some other sources, but of course they very much prefer to receive the content from the hoteliers themselves, because then they know that it is up to date and fresh content. So if you haven't logged into the Metasearch extranet for a while, go ahead and maybe do that after the webinar. So the OTA content scores also include images, and images here we're talking about relevant, of course, and high resolution images, and they're very much important and a major requirement for a good score. And here's just some research that we've pulled in. For example, 86% of travel shoppers view more than 10 images when they view a hotel's media gallery on OTA sites. So it's heavily influences the selection of travelers on when they make a decision for a hotel. As a guideline, we have provided on the right-hand side the image requirements that we would set for a hotel, and that factors in all our experience with various OTAs, with the GDSs, and the website as well. So, what are the content management challenges, and why does not everyone focus more on content management? Well, as I mentioned before, it's very time consuming. That is really the main problem. But also because you need to actually review multiple extranets, multiple OTAs, in order to update your channels. So, for example, if your restaurant opening times change, then you would actually need to log into all your different OTA extranets, wholesalers, meta searches, and so on, in order to make those updates. So that's very time consuming. Also, as I already mentioned, the OTAs like to make frequent updates to their extranets. So that requires you to log in monthly in order to make sure that everything is up to date and that you've provided all the information that you can. And yeah, unfortunately, how content is displayed also varies very strongly across the different channels. So you really need to focus on providing the same content for every channel. And here we've just provided you with some examples and how information can differ, for example, between different GDSs. So here we have Sabre and Amadeus showing the shopping screen. So this is the first screen that the hotels see when they search for a particular hotel in a city. And even though both GDSs show search criteria, they show different search criteria. So for example, on Sabre, you can see 7 indicators, and if they are highlighted, of course, that means that this is available for a hotel. Whereas Amadeus only shows the 3 most important search criteria. Also, they show distance and location, also very differently, whereas Amadeus only shows whether it's a downtown location or west, south, or east of the city, whereas Sabre shows the exact distance from the airport. GDSs also pose another content management challenge, and that hotels need to be aware of all the character and content limitations in order to display the content correctly. So in the GDSs, we have a lot of character limitations, for example, for the rate name. So making sure that you use only, for example, here in Sabre, 30 characters is very important. And also use a consistent structure between the different room types so that a travel agent can really see the differences between the different room types and make decisions on which room and rate combination to book very easily. And of course, mention the rate inclusions in a very obvious way so that the travel agents can make those decisions quickly. But rate inclusions are not only important for the GDSs, but also for OTAs and the website. So here we have an example of Expedia, for example, showing free parking and free internet as a highlight of that particular rate, whereas the website does not mention free Wi-Fi at all. So as attribute-based selling is gaining importance, it's becoming ever more important to really focus on content and making sure those information are the same across the different channels. And as I mentioned, the time consuming factor a lot of times now, we thought it would be good to show you an overview of actually how much content is required to be filled out by the various channels. So here we have a hotel with 2 room types. And for example, for Booking.com, they would need to fill out 1,517 criteria on their extranet. Expedia is even worse with 2,125 criteria. So if a hotel, for example, has 10 channels, you need to fill out roughly 10,000 criteria only for those 10 channels. And keeping that up to date is just a massive task. And not only does it mean when you have those change channels, you need to up those 10,000 channels, but also if, for example, you have a new criteria that is being added to your hotel, for example, if you get a new restaurant, then you actually need to log into those 24 or those 10 channels and make sure and check which channel actually allows you to add the restaurant information, because that is very different across the channels as well. So here we have an example of the complex OTA extranet structures and how you can quickly oversee or miss out on content input. So here, Booking.com for restaurant, just a short or a quick selection between yes and no actually reveals a lot of content that can be added in addition in order to even more increase the content that you supply to Booking.com and also increases the travelers' information that they can receive from Booking.com. And of course, any other OTAs. Here's an example from Expedia where you can actually see once you've clicked on self-parking, then you get a lot more information that you can then fill out. And they also have a lot more options that can be displayed once you click on those. So let's talk about how static content can be managed. First of all, content quality and content freshness play a very big role in static content management. OTAs do not like third-party content, for example, from tour operators or so, as it may lack quality and quantity, and therefore OTAs prefer content directly from the hotels. And that is why this content management should also be also remain at hotel level. So using the right content is a very important factor when you update your content. Make sure that you use unique content on your own website as opposed to just copying the descriptions that are on the OTAs. Make sure you stand out with the different content. And also figure in, like if you log into an OTA and you see that they've added new information, new criteria, if this is relevant and if you offer that in that facility or amenity at your hotel, also make sure that you not only update the OTAs, but also update your website with the fresh content. If you do not have a lot of time to update content constantly, make sure maybe to avoid information that deals with, for example, opening times or so that maybe are updated more often. So that means that you don't have to constantly log into the OTA extranets and make those updates. Remove obsolete content. So after something has been renovated, make sure that you remove that information from the websites as well after the fact. So for example, here while we were searching for some examples for you, we actually found this example here where on the hotel website it was still saying that the hotel or this room type was recently renovated in 2010. So of course, that needs to be updated. And not only focus on the right content, but also make sure that the content is the same across the different OTAs. So for example, here we have the breakfast timings as 6:30. However, on the next OTA, 6:30 to 10:30, and on the second OTA, we can then see 6:30 to 10 a.m. only. So how can you make sure that your content is in parity across the different channels? Well, the best way really is to set up and maintain as a regular content check um, timeline, basically, so that every 3 months, every 6 months, you have a person at your hotel going through the different information that is displayed across the different channels. And make sure that the current content is displayed correctly. Have a look at different language versions as well to make sure that there is no translation errors. And also take the time to review those OTA content scores to make sure how do you perform with regards to your competitive set. And yeah, all of that then establishes aesthetic content that is in parity across the different channels and prevents wrong guest expectations. An even better way, of course, than just establishing a content check structure is to build a content management database or to use a content management database that just powers all content from one place. So similar to what we see with dynamic content, with visual content, the same should be the case for static content. So we at h2c, we have set out to build such a tool which is called CONTtest, and I just wanted to show you how we structure the content management process in order to align and centralize the content management. So after we ask the hotel to fill out our content database, we then verify whether the information is correctly displayed on all the various channels. And if there are any discrepancies, we then correct them with the hotel's approval and make sure that the content is in parity. And then from that moment onwards, the content manager then can be established and can be used in order to just make the updates from one central point and not having to log into the different OTA, Metasearch, wholesaler, extranets. Another thing that we would like to mention is that content management databases not only are valuable for managing content, but they can also be used for some other areas that are gaining more traction. For example, AI, machine learning, an example for that is the chatbots. Chatbots require information in order to answer all the questions that are asked by the travelers. So having a central database with all your content also allows you to quickly connect to chatbots, and then these chatbots can use that information from the central database that you have for your static content. And with this, I would like to wrap up our webinar. As we mentioned, content drives conversion, but it remains wildly underestimated. Different channels require different content, so you always need to make sure that you provide the correct content to the correct channel. And it's very time consuming to keep up with the extranet changes, but set a routine and a content check structure in order to make sure that you're aware of when extranets change the information. and an automated static content management system could cover those challenges that are in the industry today and also ensure correctness and freshness. And with that, I would like to hand over to you and see if there is any questions that have come up throughout the webinar. Also, I would just like to mention that we will be providing the recording of this webinar via email to you after we have completed it. So please feel free to share it with any of your colleagues as well. Okay. If there are no further questions, then I would like to thank you very much for participating. I hope you found the webinar useful and interesting. If any further questions come up, please feel free to contact us at any time. And if you would like to attend further webinars of ours after attending this one, please feel free to register for our newsletter, which you will see the login sign or the register link once you've logged out of the webinar. So thank you again for joining, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.